Gather around, Skull Brothers and Sisters. This is Minnesota Sports Talk, presenting Under the Lights with your hosts, Justin and Dave, next in 3, 2, 1.
What's going on, Vikings fans? This is Purple and Gold for Days with Justin and Rochester, and we have a special guest. Ryno is back again with Vikings Uncensored, filling in for Dave, who is across the pond doing some little job stuff here. Ryno, thanks for joining us. You should almost be the third host here with how many weeks in a row you've been here. What's going on, my friend?
Oh, same old. Just taking in the off-season stuff and keeping track and starting to do a little draft work and things like that, and getting ready for the off-season festivities.
Yes, it is unfortunate that we are already in off-season festivity mode. We're going to talk mostly Vikings here tonight. We'll probably touch on the AFC NFC Championship games here as well. But having said all that, thank you so much for joining. And if I may say so, thank you for filling in for me last week. We had a little scheduling conflict. The old snow days. You see, my daughter had her music concert the previous Thursday, got snowed out, got rescheduled to Tuesday. I said, Dave, I can't. It just is what it is, So having said all that, thanks again for sitting with me. You guys had a great show last week. Well, let's start with around the NFL. We'll get to the Vikings shortly. What do you think of the old NFC AFC Championship games as we Vikings fans were sitting at home hoping Philly would lose, but alas, it didn't happen. What are your thoughts on this weekend's festivities?
I guess the first thing that, and this has been kind of the trending topic ever since then, is how god awful horrid the officiating was in both games.
No doubt.
The NFL has got to step up and do something. I mean, I hate the tinfoil hat conspiracy theory people who keep saying, the NFL is rigged and all this other stuff. It's not. But when you see some of those blatantly horrible calls like were made in those two games this weekend, It doesn't help dispel that narrative. That's part of a problem. I mean, and then you got Tony Romo, who's starting to sound like Jim Ross and Jerry the King Lawler up there in the booth doing his over the top.
Ryno, did you see this? Ryno, could you believe? Okay, sorry, couldn't help.
Yeah, it's exact. I liked Tony Romo when he first came in and started doing this stuff.
Yes,
but he's lost
a
now.
Yeah,
absolutely has. On the NFC side of things, you got to feel bad for San Francisco. I mean, they were forced to play a quarterback in the second half who physically could not throw the ball because his UCL was torn in half.
Yeah.
I think, and this has been a topic I saw quite a bit of chatter on too, about the NFL having to revisit that rule about the third string quarterback not taking up an active, or, with the active roster spots on game day and stuff, especially in the playoffs for situations like this.
Right. Well, to me, I'll say it like this. It is unfortunate that they haven't figured out this eye in the sky, this expedited replay process, because if you're I like the idea. The idea is to say, okay, here's some obvious ones. A coach only gets 2 challenges, and even if they get one wrong and the second one right, they're out of challenges. This is one we should just be able to buzz down and say, nah, that ain't right. But if you're going to go that route, then you better figure out how you're going to do this. Oh, well, that was kind of questionable, and it was 4th down, and they're rushing up to the line of scrimmage. Listen, it's kind of like when an offense substitutes a player, the umpire steps in and says, no, you can't just snap off a play until you give the other team a chance to substitute. There should be something along that nature to say, if there's something close, then make it universal, which is to say, hey, at least 10 seconds needs to run by to at least give any coach on either side of the ball a chance to at least look at 1 or 2 replays. And frankly, if that was an under 2-minute situation in, at the end of the first half or the end of the game, that play would have been blown dead to say, we're going to take a look at this. So right. I don't understand why, if you're going to go with this expedited replay process, which is exactly what under 2 minutes always is to say, oh, no, wait a second. We got to make sure this is the NFC Championship game. It was 4th down, where it's either going to be 1st and goal for the Eagles, or the 49ers are going to have the ball at near midfield I don't understand how they don't just jump in and say, no, we're going to take a look at that one, expedited process. And you know what? If 15 seconds go by and it's clear that he caught the ball, okay, yeah, we're good. Move on. Yeah. That was a little ridiculous. Now, Philadelphia had all the advantages in that game, to say the least. Home field advantage. The referees did not cost the 49ers that game. They made the uphill battle almost even more impossible before they even lost Brock Purdy. And it is unfortunate that, as we said, that he got injured, because at that particular point in the game, it's like you're on your fourth string quarterback, and now your fourth string quarterback is hurt. You got to put your third back in, and he's utterly useless. I mean, you could have thrown a pass better than Brock Purdy could. Let me get some shout outs here. Juke, what's going on? Thanks for joining us. We appreciate it. Justin, love your namesake. Yeah, it is influence. It's allowed, but it's not rigged. I completely agree, because you're right. Who wants a more undeserving fan base in the Super Bowl? I think we can all absolutely agree to that. We'll get to the Eagles here in a second here. What's up, Rich? Thanks for joining us. Much appreciated. What do you guys think about the center we just signed? Well, you know what? I'm going to star that one. I'm going to come back to that, but thanks for joining us, Rick. Appreciate you. We'll get back to your question in just a moment here. Having said that, San Francisco had the most entertaining part of that game was Trent Williams going WWE at the end and just body slamming that guy. And then the fight breaks out on that. So it's unfortunate, but you know what? Maybe that's at a disadvantage for Philly that they've had such an easy road where you had the Giants and a shorthanded 49ers team, that maybe that will, at least that's what we kept telling ourselves about the Vikings being battle tested here and there. So the main event, again, it did not disappoint. Two heavyweight quarterbacks throwing haymakers left and right between Burrow and Patrick Mahomes. And now we'll get into some more of the officiating nonsense here. I'm going to say it like this. Cincinnati got screwed, but no, the NFL is not rigged. I'm not mad about that unnecessary roughness hit on Patrick Mahomes. That is the correct call.
That was a correct call.
Right call. You can't just say, "Oh, well, it's the championship game, and this is going to put them in a game-winning." You have to make that call. The call that makes me mad was the blatant block in the back on that punt return, not 2 plays before that. So, your thoughts on the championship game? Burrow, Mahomes, it did not disappoint me. What do you think, Ryno?
No, it was pretty much everything we expected the game was going to be. I mean, it was, like you said, two heavyweights throwing haymakers at each other and taking a punch and getting back up. I mean, I'm pretty sure after that Patrick Mahomes has got to have some sort of bionic implants or something like that. I mean, high ankle sprain, and he played like, you could see him hobbling out there, but it didn't really affect him much, I don't think.
Right.
But yeah,
it is unfortunate that game is going to be marked by, the questionable calls, because it was an outstanding game. It was back and forth. It wasn't hey, this team, had control of the game for, a quarter and a half and another team made this great comeback. It was just straight up a very, very good football game, the way a championship game should be, between two very, very good teams, two very, very good quarterbacks. I'm a little irritated with some of the members of our fan base that want to prop up our quarterback by degrading and, tearing down Joe Burrow because he got sacked on his final play. Again, trying to, make light and try to, absolve our quarterback's last play. How about this? How about we just enjoy great quarterback play one way or the other, and not always having to make it about, propping up our own guy. I don't know. I could be off base there, but what do I know, Ryno? But
no, I completely agree with you on that. There's both sides of the Kirk Cousins Civil War. Neither side ever wastes an opportunity to either take a high point to use it to prop Kirk up, or a low point to knock him down.
I agree.
And then you got the vast majority of us that are in the middle that just want what's best for the team, that hear this back and forth, and it just drives me nuts sometimes.
No, it does. We'll touch on it a little bit later. We got to give a shout out to the normal host and the guy who put this all together here, Dave, Minnesota Sports Talk.
What's up, Dave?
Thanks for joining us. Hope you're having a good time over across the pond there, and we look forward to next week when we prepare for the Super Bowl here. But I'm just going to say this. I'm really looking forward to this Super Bowl. I wish it had been San Francisco, simply because I cannot stand Philadelphia fans. I don't necessarily hate the Eagles per se. I actually like Hurts. I really do.
Yeah.
But I got to get this one up there. Cheerio. There you go. There you go, Dave. But I'm sorry. I just can't pull for him because I can't stand Philly fans. Listen, I was actually walking out of church this morning. What's up, Mary? Thanks for joining us. I'm glad I actually get to see
Miss Mary.
Mary here. Mary, if I'm recalling correctly, she's one of the OGs on Climbing the Pockets podcast, if that's the Mary that I'm familiar with here. But thanks for joining again, Mary. Very much appreciate you. Hit the sub buttons to Minnesota Sports Talk and Purple and Gold for days you didn't do so last week. And as it goes for everybody, please hit the like buttons, regardless of which channel you're on. And if you're on a laptop, hit an open tab and hit like on both channels if you could, please. Yes, Dave Sweet Mary is back. That being said, all I'm going to say about it is this. It's one thing to be a passionate fan. We're all passionate fans. Mm-hmm. And we've all gone to games. We all love razzing each other. We all love Green Bay, Minnesota fans. Well, we razz each other. Oh, you guys suck. You guys suck. Go back home. All that good stuff.
Right.
There's a line between good-natured fun, even between rivals, that is beyond obliterated and crossed when you are chucking eggs and chucking full beer cans at people just to say, hey, you're wearing a jersey from the other team. Therefore, I need to commit a crime against you. If you went to the mall in Philadelphia and just threw a beer can at somebody, you'd be arrested. I've never understand this notion of how razzing to the point of violence is somehow accepted in that town. You know, I just don't. But hey, what's going on? What's up, Raymond? How y'all doing? Thanks for joining us. Very much appreciate you. Yes, Vikings Uncensored is always such a great show. We're going to be doing some negotiating in the off season to do some more crossovers. But what's going on? Thanks, appreciate it here. So, with all that being said, early picks. I know injury reports haven't come out yet, but we got the double brothers for the first time. We've got Travis Kelce and his brother facing each other off. We also have Jalen Hurts and Patrick Mahomes facing each other off, as well as the quote-unquote Andy Reid Bowl. I never understood. I mean, how many years has it been since he's been in Philadelphia? If it had been like a year or two later, I could see that.
Yeah, he's been in Kansas City for what, 10 years now? 12 years?
At least a decade. So, but having said that, what are your I mean, I know who you want to win, but what do you think is going to happen in this game?
Honestly, I don't see how you can go against Kansas City here. Just see, I mean, and I'm not taking anything away from Jalen Hurts. He's a very good quarterback, and, kid has a very bright future in the league, but Patrick Mahomes is just on another level. I mean, and he's proving it in and out. You know, they've got an offensive line that keeps him relatively well protected. That defense is pretty dang good. It's not elite, but it's pretty good. They're getting a lot of contributions from their rookie class this year, especially in the back end. A couple of those guys I wish we would have taken instead of drafting a guy that's been hurt all season. But
well, there's that. but it's only year one. We can't judge it. We can't judge a draft class.
Right, exactly. But yeah, just preliminary indications have shown. But yeah, and in no way, shape, or form am I going to cheer for Philadelphia just for the stuff that you said. Like I said, I don't hate the Eagles,
right?
But their fan base is what sours me on that franchise at all. So, but all that stuff aside, and just looking at the football thing of it, Philadelphia had a pretty damn easy route to the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
Kansas City's been battle tested. That the game against the Bengals, back and forth and hard. The Jacksonville game wasn't a cakewalk. I mean, they've had to work for it to get where they are, and right now, unless something major comes out in the next 2 weeks, Kansas City's my pick.
I concur that I am desperate, just desperate for the Philadelphia Eagles to not win this game simply because their fan base is already insufferable and intolerable. And I just hope that somehow, some way, Patrick Mahomes can pull another rabbit out of his hat. Because let's face it, right now, the Eagles are the healthier team. They just really are at this point. And the Eagles have so much roster depth, particularly on defense. When a guy like Ndamukong Suh, who's, past his prime, but he's certainly not over the hill. But when that guy's one of your rotational guys, as an example of the roster depth that Philadelphia has. Their offensive line is outstanding. Their defense is outstanding. And again, I really like to know how good Philly's defense really is because, have they really actually played anybody in the last 2 months? I don't know. I mean, the last time that they played anybody of consequence was the Dallas Cowboys, who put 40 up on them. But that's the Dallas Cowboys, and we know how up and down they can be. So I really just hope that Kansas City just absolutely boat races those guys simply because, like I said, it's fine. I was talking to a guy at work who knows that, I'm a Vikings fan, and I was talking about the game. And I said, you know what, when the Vikings are out of the playoffs, my mantra is ABGB, which is anybody but Green Bay. Okay.
Right.
Now, it was really tough for us in 2010 when the NFC Championship game was the Packers and the Bears, because for a lot of Vikings fans, myself included, the Bears we hate almost as much as we hate the Packers. Not quite. So I had to cheer for the Bears. I had to cheer for Jay Cutler and Brian Urlacher and company. Holy cow, how terrible is that? But anyway, if Philadelphia and Green Bay were to meet in the NFC Championship game right now, I'm not saying that I would flip it to pulling for the Packers, but it's now close. And up until this point, with how terrible Philly fans have soured me, it's never even been a question. It's never been close. I actually question if I might actually cheer for the Packers because that's how much I cannot stand Philadelphia fans. But let's move on. This is actually a Vikings podcast here. So now that we've hit around the NFL, let's talk about the Vikings in the offseason. We've heard all kinds of rumors and trade discussions and who are we going to keep and who are we going to get rid of. Let's start with the search for the Vikings' newest defensive coordinator. Had some candidates fly off the board here. And oh, by the way, in case you haven't heard, the Denver Broncos pulled off a trade today, and they have traded for head coach Sean Payton from the New Orleans Saints. They gave up more draft capital that they don't already have. So before we get back to the Vikings, because this is somewhat related to that, what did you think about the Denver Broncos doubling down on trading away first-round picks to get Russell Wilson in the first place to now try to get him a head coach that might actually have some competence here? Do you think this is going to work, or do you think this has got yet another disaster written all over it?
I honestly hope to God it has disaster written all over it, because I feel the same way about Sean Payton as I do the Eagles fan base. So, basically I saw something this afternoon when I was scrolling through, the only way Denver had a first-round pick to even give up was that Bradley Chubb trade that they pulled off.
Right.
So they basically traded Bradley Chubb and a fourth-round pick for Sean Payton.
In effect. Yep. You had to do some mental gymnastics because I'm like, wait a second, how in the world could Denver send them a first-round pick when they sent a whole bunch of them to Seattle? And then I remembered they traded Chubb to Miami. And that pick, by the way, was actually San Francisco's pick that they traded for Trey Lance. So there's a little bit of gymnastics there. So just for the record, that is, I believe, the 30th pick in this upcoming draft that's going to go to New Orleans, who didn't have a first-round pick because they traded theirs away to get Chris Olave last year. So, but yeah, I get it. You made the investment in Russell Wilson, and you don't want to admit it to being a sunk cost after just 1 year. But having said all of that, you've given up so much capital. Now, I get it. Nathaniel Hatch didn't work, and it didn't work for size. And they're hoping that, maybe let's put this guy with a, Hall of Fame head coach. Maybe we can actually get some return on the investment that we made last year. But they're certainly doubling down on there. And yes, I have no – I'm going to choose my words carefully. I have no good thoughts for Sean Payton at this point either. But as I've said on a previous podcast, let's say some of those bullets for Darrell Bevell and Brad Childress for not even bothering to adjust to the fact that they were coming off to try to.
Well, there's that too, yeah.
But hey, what do I know? But no, it's going to be interesting. We're going to find out real quick. Is Russell Wilson as cooked as he looked last year, or was he straddled with an incompetent head coach, first-year guy? We'll find out quick, because this is going to be his last stand. If he can't get this done with Sean Payton, then he is absolutely done for. We got to say hello to a couple people that just joined us here. Rap, my brother, thanks for joining us. Look at the bros. Hey, we appreciate you. Thanks for calling in. Hit that like button, everybody, on both channels, Minnesota Sports Talk and Purple and Gold for days, and let's get this chat a little bit some more numbers up in here. Let's try to get it as close to last week as you guys had it going on, if I may say so again. But I love this one from Mary. Peyton has a tough road ahead of him. Yes, They don't have any draft picks, and they gave away a handful of players, if I'm not mistaken. They gave away Noah Fant and a couple of other players there as well. But
there was like, it was Fant, and it was
what was the other guy?
What's his name? The quarterback.
Drew Lock. Yes,
Drew Lock.
That's right. So, but yeah, Sean Payton to the Denver Broncos. The Houston Texans what was the name of the guy that they got? I'm sorry.
DeMeco Ryans. San Francisco's defensive coordinator.
Thank you.
Who used to play for Houston.
There you go. So a couple of head coaches on the move here today. Do you think that gives the Vikings a clear picture of, now let's circle back to their defensive coordinators, to who they're going to land? Or are they still in wait and see mode until, a couple more head coaching jobs are filled here, Ryno? I
think they know who they want, but that certain individual is still waiting to hear on a head coaching gig. Now, that being said, I saw that once the AFC Championship game was over, Arizona asked to interview both coordinators from Cincinnati. So if it just reading the tea leaves a little bit, I don't think that Flores is actually the front runner for that job down there. Because if he was, I think they'd have hired him already.
I would think so, which is where I was going. So what is Flores waiting on? Is he just waiting for Arizona to see if they can't get one of their guys, to see if he gets offered? And if he doesn't get offered, then he'll take the job with Minnesota? Or we just got that many dominoes in effect here right now?
That's my guess. He's made no secret he wants to be a head coach. And, right now the Arizona job is his only opportunity for this year. And I fully believe that, when they had him in here, that KOC and Kwesi said, hey, we want you as our DC. We understand you're waiting on a head coaching potential position. Excuse me. If you get that, great. Good luck to you. If not, we want you here. That's my thought.
I would tend to agree. I'm going to say this. The Vikings need to make sure that they have a bit of a backup plan, because I agree that Flores is absolutely their top choice at the moment. But if they don't get him, where are they going? And the reason I say this is I don't want just this was our second, third, fourth, fifth choice here. So at some point, I understand Flores is going to weigh his options, and he's going to want to do what's best for him. But at some point, do you think they have some assurances that if he doesn't get a head coaching gig, that he's going to accept the defensive coordinator job?
I think they probably do, because if they didn't, I think we probably would have moved on right now. Because honestly, I think Sean Desai is probably their backup plan.
What do you think of Sean Desai, by the way? Let's talk about him real quick.
There's a few things to like about the guy. One, he's versed in the Fangio defense, so the scheme wouldn't have to change much other than the way it's called, kind of a thing. The guy made it through 3 different regimes in Chicago. That tells you something,
right?
And then plus getting to work with Pete Carroll for a year with to get some more wrinkles added to the defense isn't a bad thing. And the fact that the Vikings interviewed him last year and then brought him back and interviewed him again this year means that there's something there that they like.
What's up, Skull Mafia? Thanks for joining us. Hey, it doesn't matter whether you lay it on hey, it's all good. What's up, My Worthless Opinion? Again, one of my favorite YouTube handles of all time. My Worthless Opinion. I always love that one. Here's.
I honestly hope Pettin is not the backup plan.
Yes, I was just going to say this. Mike Pettin is the ultimate. If plan A doesn't work, you should have a plan B, not a plan A revisited. If Mike Pettin could not convince the Minnesota Vikings that he was worthy of being elevated above Ed Donachelle while the season was going on, then I don't want him as our defensive coordinator. Putting aside, the failures, or maybe failure is too strong a word, but putting aside the misgivings that was the Green Bay Packers defense when he was in charge over there. I didn't even want Mike Pettin to begin with, but okay, fine. He's not the coordinator. He's a subordinate guy. He's a consultant, whatever the case may be. I have zero interest in Mike Pettin to be our defensive coordinator moving forward. I don't care if it's the same system. I don't care about continuity. I don't care about any of those things. What I care about is what is best for this team. And if he could not get promoted to call plays in the middle of the season or at the end of the season with this Vikings team with Ed Donachelle in the house, I'm sorry. And maybe that is guilt by association, and maybe that's a little unfair, but I'm just saying in totality, Mike Pettin better not be the fallback guy is all I'm going to say on that. Yeah. So yeah, Flores is my choice. One, because okay, that would provide you some continuity. You have a guy who has been a head coach here before. And also, I just like the results that he has given over the course of his tenure, both as a defensive coordinator as well as a head coach. At the multiple stops that he has made, he's always taken defenses and always elevated them. And frankly, even just hearing and seeing the word aggressive, okay,
exactly,
okay, that gets you 3/4 of the way to hired. Oh, he's an aggressive play caller. Check. We'll take that. But in all seriousness, I'm not afraid that if he's a one-year wonder, that's fine. I'm okay with that. And the reason I say that is I don't want a mediocre guy just so that, well, guess what? If he's a mediocre guy, he might be a one-year wonder too. I'd rather have a one-year wonder with the best possible guy there. So to me, again, I'm not saying I hope he doesn't get a head coaching job because, that's a little disingenuous, but I guess from our perspective, that is who I hope we end up with. That is who I think is going to give this team the best chance moving forward. We got a couple more comments in here, but Skull Mafia's got one. We riot if he gets the job. No another Mike running the show. All righty.
No, one interesting thing I did see today, just looking through some of the footage and stuff from the Senior Bowl, somebody snapped a shot of Kwesi talking to Flores down there, and they look like they were chumming it up pretty good. So hopefully read it as you want to, I guess. But
that's a good point from Mike's the only guy in there listed as multiple top 10 defenses. No, I totally agree. Okay. I was just going to say, I'm just waiting for Too Evil to get in here to say Mike Zimmer. And lo and behold, right on cue, there is Too Evil to hold. Thank you kindly for joining us. We very much appreciate
We offered it to Zimmer, but he went to Colorado with Deion Sanders instead. So
Right. There you go. In all seriousness, thanks everybody for joining. If you haven't already done so, hit the like button on both Minnesota Sports Talk and Purple and Gold for Days. And if you have not subscribed to any one of these three following channels, please do so. That is our guest, Vikings Uncensored, Purple and Gold for Days, and of course the man who puts all this together, Minnesota Sports Talk. So thank you kindly everybody for tapping in here this evening. All righty, moving forward. I know it's been played out a little bit, but let's get some specifics in here. What do the Vikings need to do? Do they need to just make a couple of cursory moves there, restructure a few guys here and there, and then try one or two veteran free agents and keep on running it back? Do they need to completely blow it up, or do they need to do something in the middle? And when I say what do they need to do, I'll start with what do you think they should do? And then I'll ask the question, what do you think they will do? So the floor is yours, Ryno. If you're Kwesi, what are you going to do this offseason?
Well, I think looking at the four teams that were in the conference championship games this weekend and looking at it with an unbiased eye, we are not one or two pieces away from being on the level that those teams were. We are several pieces. And I know this is an unpopular opinion amongst the Vikings fan base, but we cannot keep dragging these legacy players along on bloated contracts that their play no longer warrants them being paid at that level, but we're still doing it because we keep kicking the can down the road. I mean, that was a hallmark of Rick Spielman. We're going to keep Mike Zimmer happy by keeping his guys, no matter if they're past their prime or not. We're going to pay them a bunch of money just because they're fan favorites. They're Adam Thielen, who, the great Minnesota story, this, that, and everything else.
Right.
We're going to give a large second contract to a running back who is usually good to miss at least 2 games a season.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've made no secrets in the past about my theory that you do not give any running back a big second contract. You run them through their first contract, you thank them for their service, and you move on to the next guy.
I agree. Stupid internet. Sorry about that. Well, I would concur. I think, and this is the phrase that I've used, no more sacred cows.
Yep.
Sacred cows need to be put out to pasture. With all due respect, we know Adam Thielen is a hometown guy, We know Adam Thielen has an incredible story about rags to riches. But I'm sorry, it's time. Now, if Adam Thielen, after thinking it over a little bit, says, all right, I'll take a discount. I will accept my role as the third wide receiver. And by the way, stop talking to me about how many opportunities you didn't get. I think you were like the 33rd most targeted wide receiver in the NFL. And last I checked, there's 32 teams, which means you were right up there as far as targets go. Yeah, you know what, Adam? I know it sucks. But at some point, your skills deteriorate. And that's not your fault.
No.
That's called being human. Nobody is saying, what is wrong with this guy? Why is he so slow all of a sudden? Everybody has a time where they just can't do it anymore. And Adam Thielen, from 2016 to 2020, absolutely was a top 15 receiver. He's not that anymore. He just isn't.
No.
Now, I don't know all of the salary cap implications because I knew they kicked the can a little bit when they gave him an extension and then they renegotiated a little bit there. So he's got a lot of dead cap hit. But to me, it's like, number one, you got to take less. And I'm not saying that you don't deserve your money. I don't want to speak for you, but I'm pretty sure I am speaking for you in the same vein. Nobody is saying that a player does not deserve their money. It's just a matter of every business has assets and it has liabilities. And at some point, an asset depreciates to which it's carrying a higher liability than what the asset is actually worth. From a business perspective, I'm not talking about actual dollars here. Adam Thielen and anybody else in the NFL, whether I like you or not, you get your money as soon and you get as much of it as you can with what you guys put yourselves through. I'm not saying it like that. What I am saying is that the liability vis-a-vis his cap hit versus the asset of what his skills at this point can bring to this team, they just don't add up. I'm sorry, they don't. Now, if Adam Thielen wants to take a few weeks off and cool down a little bit and say, all right, maybe I could find greener pastures elsewhere, or maybe, you know what, I'll just take what I can get here because I don't want to uproot my family. I got businesses here, this, that, and the third. Either way. But Adam Thielen cannot come back on his current contract.
No.
And there's an argument to be made that they should just move on from him completely, but that's for the pundits to decide. Now, Dalvin Cook, I'm with you. With all due respect, I'm not saying he didn't deserve to get the money back. What I'm saying is I agree that at some point you just don't pay running backs. You certainly don't pay running backs with the injury history that he's had. There are some valid points that Rapp has made and others that, well, you know what, if we're going to talk about Kirk Cousins being behind a mediocre offensive line, then we also have to give some of that love to Dalvin Cook as well. Even with that being said, you can find other running backs to do what Dalvin Cook has done. Now, yes, if you fix the offensive line, maybe Dalvin Cook could squeeze more juice out of that turnip than other running backs could. But at that point, you've already spent money that you don't have. So if Dalvin Cook is willing to renegotiate his contract and take a lesser number, I'm willing to keep him for one more year, but that is it at most. But if not, then I'm, as much as I hate saying it, I'm okay, he's got to go too. With all due respect, Eric Kendricks, you're a Vikings Ring of Honor member inductee 2 minutes after you retire from football, but you ain't got it anymore, bro. I'm sorry. Now, I think some of his deterioration was the system of going to a 4-3. I know he played it in college, but he just looked ultra lost out there. And if they're going to continue on this route of, no, we're going to keep this scheme the way we have it because we think this scheme is the best thing to do, then you got to let go of Eric Kendricks. I'm sorry. Now, I want to get your opinion on Harrison Smith because I am still torn on this one. I think he makes I think his cap number is too high for what he can bring. He's due $20 million next season, 21 after that, and 24 after that. He's still good. I don't think he's been utilized properly. But what do you do with Harrison Smith? Because that one I'm really torn on, Ryno. What do you think?
Yeah, I get the torn part. I mean, full disclosure, Harrison Smith's been one of my favorite Vikings players ever since he's been on the team. But I was in favor of moving on from Harrison Smith last year.
As was I.
The one thing, and this goes back to kind of your Sacred Cows comment earlier, the one thing that this team has had a real problem with is holding on to players too long.
Yep.
It's better to have the Belichick mentality where you trade him or get rid of him a year early than keeping him a year late. And now Harrison Smith, I mean, if you could restructure him and get him down, I'm not opposed to keeping him around for another year or so, but I think if you can get value for him, you move on from him as well. Realistically, as it sits right now, there's probably 3 guys on this team that are untouchable. That is Justin Jefferson, that is Christian Darrisaw, and probably TJ Hawkinson.
Ryan O'Neal, maybe?
Yeah, you could put O'Neal on there too.
I'll give you. I got to go 4. Yep.
We'll go 4. Yeah. Other than that, nobody on this team is untouchable.
I wholeheartedly agree with the Harrison Smith. Here's the thought process that I have had for pert near 3 years now. But before I do that, I'm going to put this in the chat here. Everybody put it in the chat here. A, B, or C. A, run it back. B, soft rebuild where you trade some players but keep others. C, full-on rebuild and trade as many players as you can for as many assets as you can. And we'll see what the fans here say. After the 2019 season, after you had gone to the NFC Championship and then signed Kirk Cousins and Sheldon Richardson were basically your 2 moves, the only thing the Vikings did was re-sign their existing players, vis-a-vis Anthony Barr we talked about. We talked about Thielen, talked about Diggs a little bit there as well. Harrison Smith got a raise. Xavier Rhodes got a raise. You really didn't do much besides adding Cousins and Richardson other than just give your existing players more money, which is why you had to sacrifice some of that roster depth. So before any of the Kirk stands say that I said, well, as soon as they signed Kirk Cousins, the team went to heck. I just got done saying everybody. So let me be clear there.
Right.
One thing, when the Vikings signed Kirk Cousins to that massive deal, fully guaranteed, one thing that I was sold on, that we were all sold on, that tipped the balance for me was they said, we only signed him to a 3-year deal. We anticipate that we're going to have this defense in the 2017 form for at least 2 more seasons, if not 3. The reality is that the defense, it didn't trail off right away. It went from number 1 to 5 or 6 in 2018 to 9 or 10 in 2019. So for anybody who's saying, well, the last 3 years the defense has been this, so we can't talk about Cousins. I'm not saying Cousins is the problem. That's not what we're saying at all. But let's not pretend that 18 and 19 didn't exist. Yes, as Davis pointed out to me, there were other factors in 18, like John DeFilippo, like Tony Sperano dying, and a whole bunch of other injuries that had happened. And those need to be factored into the equation. But where I'm going with this is after they lost to San Francisco in the division round of the playoffs, which ultimately was Diggs' last game with us, I said, this run's over. This window is shut. This team has gone as far as it can go. They wanted to think that their window was 2018 to 2020. In reality, their window was actually 2015 to 2019. And they were at the same crossroads that they're at right now. Well, we just came off this season. Now, we didn't get to the division round of the playoffs, but we did win 13 games of the regular season. And a lot of it was a little bit of puck luck, as they say. So what do? Do we tear down a 13-win team and start the process, or do we just keep pushing forward? At that point in time, I said, you know what? I've seen enough. I know that this team – and what did we do? We went out and traded for Yannick Ngakoue. That was our big move going into the 2020 season. And what did that get us? It got us 7-9, and then it got us 8-9.
And even the more infuriating part about that is we kept him around for 6 weeks and then traded him for less than what we gave up to get him in the first place. So
exactly. So where I'm going with all of this is I'm not saying that this team should be completely blown up. But what I am saying is that if your expectation is that we're just a piece or 2 away, we just need to get a couple things here and renegotiate some guys, and then we can be at the same spot that Philly was, where Dallas was, where San Francisco was. I'm sorry. That's not true. They're not close to that.
But look at that. Philadelphia won the Super Bowl in 2017. They completely tore down that team, and 5 years later, they're back.
But if you tear down a team and you get rid of Kirk Cousins, you could get another Christian Ponder or Travaris Jackson, I thought. Those are the only possibilities, I thought.
Well, and I that whole conversation, people are so shell-shocked and
scared.
Draft pick PSD over that Christian Ponder pick.
Mm-hmm.
Christian Ponder was a panic pick.
Yes.
Spielman knew we needed a quarterback. Ponder was he didn't have a first-round grade from anybody, but the run on quarterback started about pick 7 or pick 8 in there, and when they started going off the board, Spielman panicked, just like he always does when something goes wrong. When he panicked and traded for Chris Herndon last year. He panicked and traded for Kari Vedvig and then turned around and cut him. He's had a history of doing these panic picks that turn around and bite us in the backside when you could have. And I've said this before too, most of the people that are in that whole, we can't get rid of Kirk because the only other option is Ponder. The biggest majority of those guys are forgetting that that whole time we spent the last 16 years with Rick Spielman running the show. Rick Spielman got fired from the Miami Dolphins because he could not find a quarterback there.
Exactly.
And then we expected him to come here and be able to do it, and he couldn't do it here either.
Isn't that funny? Well, so as far as what I would do, I would gauge the market and see what you can. Because, again, this time last year was the time to reset the roster. You just fired your coach and GM. There are no expectations. And, yes, we wouldn't have had this season that we had. And let me be clear. We don't have to give this season back. We don't have to give those wins back. We don't have to take back the fun. I went to 3 different games this year, a couple with my gal, a couple with my kid. It was my first kid's game, and that was the Colts game. And she still wants to tell everybody on the planet that the reason they had the greatest comeback ever is because she was there. And you know what? She's taken an interest to the Vikings that I've been trying to give her. And I guess all I needed to do was spend the money to take her to a football game. But this time last year, you could have gotten a 3rd-round pick for Harrison Smith.
Mm-hmm.
You could have gotten a 4th-round pick for Eric Kendricks. You could have got something for these guys. And to your point about the Belichicking thing, about better to get rid of them 1 year too early than 1 year too late, you're not going to be able to get anything for Thielen. You're not going to be able to get anything for Eric Kendricks. You're not going to be able to get much for Harrison Smith. You might be able to get something halfway decent for a guy like Danielle Hunter, for example, but do you want to trade him in the first place? And you might be able to get something for Kirk Cousins, but do you want to even trade him in the first place? So all I'm saying is, to me, I would definitely go either B or C, because I'm sick and tired of running it back over and over again. We've been doing that since we hired Mike Zimmer. Now, yes, the first 4 years of Mike Zimmer, they were crescendoing up, and then they peaked. And instead of taking a step back and reloading the roster, you brought up the Philadelphia point that I was going to bring up as well. But let's also talk about Cincinnati. They were dead in the water for a while. They had a old coach in Marvin Lewis, much like Mike Zimmer, and they had an older quarterback, an above average quarterback in Andy Dalton. And they said, you know what? We're pulling the plug on this. The Buffalo Bills had an old coach in Rex Ryan, and who was it? Tyrod Taylor was their quarterback. Yeah. And they said, you know what? We're going to get rid of this. We're going to bring in a young coach, and we're going to get a new quarterback. Say what you want, but the Jacksonville Jaguars were also in the AFC Championship game in 2017. They tried to run it back for a couple of years, and then they said, all right, you know what? This didn't work. So, no, there is no guarantee that if you blow up this team that you're just going to end up like one of those teams. But you're also not guaranteed to be the Cleveland Browns either. And where I'm coming from is I'd rather take the chance as opposed to sticking with what we have. And what we have is a team that is always very, very good, but rarely bad and rarely great. They're always stuck in that middle, okay? Yeah. 18 seasons the Wills have owned this team. Let's go through this real quick. I have these 3 cut points. 6 wins or fewer, 11 wins or more, or in the middle is 7 to 10 wins. They've had 4 seasons with 6 wins or fewer, 4 seasons with 11 wins or more, and they have had 10 seasons between 7 and 10. And you can say that's consistency, but there's a very thin line between consistency and mediocrity. And I'm sorry, I'm willing to risk not being mediocre anymore and being bad for the chance of being good. But that's just
absolutely.
I've got a bazillion comments here. I've been sorely lacking on my putting up the comments here. This one was from earlier, so I want to talk. What do you think about this center we just signed? Do you think we need a nose tackle like a Linval Joseph? Yes, and I have no idea about this new center, but yes,
but we don't even have months anymore. We let him go again.
Oh, did we? All right.
Yeah, right after the end of the season, when Bradbury came back and was able to play, we cut him. So he's not even on the team anymore.
All righty. I'm going to go rapid fire on some of these comments here because, well, first off, I want to get back to what Dave said. He said that your unpopular opinion really isn't that unpopular of opinion. The only guy that they want back on, according to his Twitter polls, is Harrison Smith, and that they all want to see Cook, Kendricks, and Thielen gone. Skull Mafia said, I'm with Too Evil to Hope, and Two Evils was, I wish Kirk Cousins be traded for Lance. We're going to get to Cousins later. We're going to save the best for last there. But I do like what Two Evil did say here, which is 100% rebuild if they do it right, and Mary agrees with that. And that's kind of the key. I'm not saying blow it up for the sake of blowing it up, but I am saying let's stop doing the same stuff over and over again. Trade Danielle Hunter for some draft capital. That's one we can talk about here in just a second. In the Zone, thanks for joining us. Very much appreciate you, man. Thanks for coming. Appreciate you. Cook got to redo the deal. Y'all want Adams to start? Okay, I'm not sure who's going with it on that one, but I agree with this comment from Mary. Thank you to those players, but I want the best team possible in the field. Time to move on. We 100% agree there. I don't know that you can cut Harrison Smith, or maybe he meant Zadarius Smith. Evo, did you mean Zadarius or did you mean Harrison? But yes, Zadarius Smith. I forgot to bring him up earlier. I'm willing to say he's got to go. His cap number was very, very friendly for us this year, but to me, he's got to go after that. What say you on Zadarius, real quick?
I mean, if he would have continued the entire season like he started out, I'd be all for keeping him. But he had half a sack in the last half of the season.
Right. There's a reason the Green Bay Packers got rid of him, is that they knew, okay, yeah, at the beginning of the year when the guy's full tank, yeah, he's got something left. The problem is he doesn't have it for a full season. In the Zone says Smith definitely got to go, and that Hunter can go. I don't know about, we're going to go. We'll get back to Hunter in just a moment here. This is a good point from Rich. Jim used Harrison, but never used Barr as good as wasted him like Cordero. Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with that as well. My worthless opinion wants to add one more to our untouchable list. We can't trade Ryan Hunter, but I digress. Dave Thibodeau, thanks for joining us. I saw you earlier. We kind of got rambling, so thanks for joining us. Everybody, if you haven't already done so, hit those like buttons for us, and let's get that YouTube algorithm fooled here. I'm going to save these comments about what choices people would make here in just a second here, but I like this one. Just get rid of the old guys on defense, keep CJ Ham and Kennedy Nwangu, and trade Dalvin Cook and Madison for picks. First off, you can't trade Alexander Madison. He's a free agent here. All right, while I'm reading through the rest of these, what say you about Alexander Madison? Do you re-sign him if you can get him at a reasonable deal, or do you just let him walk?
I think you let him walk because somebody's going to sign him for some decent money, and I don't want to be – I mean, there again, running back on a second contract. I want to see what we have with the young guys, with Chandler and Wangwu get in there. You can pick up a guy like Alexander Madison pretty much anywhere later in the draft. And then you got another young guy on a cheap contract for 3 to 4 years. CJ Ham, I mean, they're again another one, fan favorite, hometown guy, but we don't use a fullback hardly ever in this offense. And he'd save you like $3 or $4 million, I think it is, or something like that, by cutting him loose too at the end of the year. So he's a prime candidate for being shown the door too, I think. But.
So a couple of the responses here. Raymond said C, full-on rebuild. Dave went with B, which is soft rebuild. Mary just had a comment come in here, and I'm going to save that one here for just a moment because that's ultimately where my mindset is. Listen, I'm not going to say that it was a mistake short-term for them to not go soft or closer to full rebuild this past season. I think it was an opportunity to be able to, again, when you run in a business and you have an asset that depreciates, at some point it has some resale value. And at some point that resale value keeps going down and down until you have no more resale value anymore. And this time last year, you had assets that had resale value. And guess what? Well, we got right now 5-6 draft picks at best. And we're going to have to trade down from 23. It's one thing to be trading down from 12, even though I'll say again, Kwesi didn't get as much value out of that 12 last year, but that's a whole other conversation for another day. But this team isn't, and again, I'm not trying to be negative. I'm really not. I'm not trying to be negative, but in all seriousness, you want to run it back again for what? For the chance of being competitive for the division and getting bounced in either the wild card or the division round of the playoffs? I'm sorry. It's time to – I'm not saying we need to go into a 5-year rebuild. That's not what I'm saying at all. And I'm not saying you have to do what the Chicago Bears did, which is completely tank this past season. But guess what? After next year – whose organization is going to have a better future outlook, the Vikings or the Bears? Because
it all depends on if Ryan Poles can figure out and hit the draft picks and things like that. Or, if he can't, then they're just going to continue to bottom feed for the next 3-4 years until they fire him and get somebody else in there.
This comment from Mary and a follow-up from Too Evil. I've never seen so many serious comments from Too Evil. Usually they're all about Mike Zimmer, but in all seriousness, I would rather go through a couple of bad years and get busy building this team. We can't go on expecting a Super Bowl team. To that I say, thank you, Mary. If you don't already sub me, please do, because we have like minds. Here's my point. I'm done being a middle team. There is no difference from a team that wins anywhere from 7 to 10 games and squeaks into the playoffs than a team that wins 5 games, because you're both sitting at home in the divisional round of the playoffs. Neither one of you is winning the Super Bowl. And I'm not saying that I want the Vikings to be a 5-win team for 5-6 years. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is I'm willing to risk the perpetual mediocre of 7 to 10 wins for the opportunity to get bad for a couple of years, get rid of your old contracts, get rid of your old players, and maybe you turn it around the way the teams I mentioned earlier, Cincinnati. We'll see about Jacksonville. They're not quite there yet, but they seem to be on the way up. What we can talk about. And by the way, we're not what Kansas City was when they decided to take a risk. They took a risk. They risked a team that was perpetually in the divisional round in the AFC Championship games with Alex Smith and said, we have a ceiling with this guy. Let's see if we can get a guy that has a higher ceiling than that. But I agree wholeheartedly, and I'm going to follow up with Too Evil's comment here, which is I'm absolutely sure the Vikings fan base is note enough that a couple of down years won't have much effect on ticket sales. To that, I say again, thank you.
Absolutely agree with that one.
And that is what the ultimate key to this entire conversation about what the Vikings should or shouldn't do relies on, and that's Ziggy and Mark Wilf. They are so afraid that if we have 3 or 4 bad years that they're going to lose out on ticket sales. And I'm here to tell you, Ziggy, Mark, you're not losing anybody. We've been here for 60 years. We haven't gone anywhere. Gone are the days of blackouts. It's impossible for a NFL game to be blacked out anymore in this day and age. But I'm sorry. We just need to stop doing the same thing and hoping that we catch lightning in the bottle. I'm 43 years old. We've been to the NFC Championship game in 87, 98, 2000, 2009, and 2017. We've been to the NFC Championship 5 times in my lifetime. So about every 8 to 10 years, we have one of those pop-up seasons. I'm sorry. That doesn't do anything for me anymore. I'm okay. I'm not saying I want to, but I'm okay with the idea that if we're bad for a couple of years to bring it back around. Let's try something else.
Right.
All right. We need a quarterback, bottom line. I just made a video, but yes, if you haven't checked out In the Zone's podcast, first of all, check him out. He had a very excellent video, which, like I said, check that out after you're done here as well. Are you still anti-Cousins for Lance? That's a good point. All right, let's talk about that. Would you trade Kirk Cousins for trade Lance and maybe a 3rd or 4th round pick or a 2nd next year or whatever the case may be? Let's just get this out of the way. I'll let you answer first.
Short answer, yes.
Long answer?
Long answer. The thing about this is, okay, and I'm going to preface this with it's not an I hate Kirk sucks kind of a thought process on this. Kirk Cousins is going to be 35 years old before this season starts. Average career for a starting quarterback is in that 36 to 37 year range before they start falling off the cliff. So you got 1, maybe 2 peak years of Kirk Cousins left. This goes back to that whole thing I talked about earlier about trading players while you can still get something back for them.
Right.
San Francisco is one of the teams that Kirk would waive his no trade clause to go play for.
Most definitely.
The thing with Trey Lance, I know people are going to say, oh, he's only played 26 games. He's this. He's not proven. He's this. He's that. He's whatever all else. That's fine. But you have 2 years left on his deal before you even have to make a decision on whether or not you want to pick up his 5th-year option. If he comes in and plays for those 2 years and he's no good, you draft a quarterback in 2024 and you try it again. But if he does pan out, you've got a guy he's not even 25 years old yet. He's like 23 or 24. You've got a guy who can be that franchise quarterback for the next 10 to 12 years if he pans out.
And by the way,
does, and because realistically, okay, 2 more years, do you honestly think that we're going to make the Super Bowl in the next 2 years?
No.
Not with this defense.
I'll be happy to be wrong.
Yeah, not with this defense, not with all these bloated contracts that we've got around here. So what's, to your point earlier, what's the difference if we make maybe get lucky and get to the divisional round with Kirk in 2023. That is, if we can make the defense good enough to be not ran over like insert your comment there, but or like you said, run the risk of, okay, we're only going to be a 8 or 9 win team with Trey Lance if he doesn't pan out. There's no difference, but you take a swing. You cannot be afraid to take a swing, because if you are too scared to be bad, you will never take the chances to be great.
Absolutely. I will say this for me, and I know that, like my mantra, hey, I just want to see him win one before we die. Just once. If we win more than one Super Bowl, absolutely. That's great. I will be ecstatic, happy, and satisfied, and my life as a fan will be complete to just see them win one. I don't need to see – I mean, I'll take it if it's more than one. But at some point, here's the thing. If you trade for Trey Lance, as an example, and he works out, okay, great. You've got your guy. But guess what? Even though he's already used up a couple of years of his rookie contract, you've got the franchise tag. And unless he really blows up, you're going to be able to get him on his second contract at a little less than 45, 50 million. He's not going to command, unless there's a massive turnaround, he's not going to command that market value contract that, you know, guys like Lamar Jackson and Kyler Murray and eventually Joe Burrow and eventually Justin Herbert and contracts like what Mahomes and Allen have gotten. He's going to be a slightly less than mid-tier market value contract. That's number one. Number two, you hired Kevin O'Connell to be a quarterback whisperer, to say, hey, we haven't been able to get this quarterback right for season upon season upon season upon decade. But if you're going to bring in Kevin O'Connell, why is it then that the only option that Kevin O'Connell could possibly win with is the guy we currently have? I'm sorry. You brought O'Connell in here to be a guy that can be a coach and a quarterback combination. It doesn't necessarily have to be Kirk Cousins. And yeah, I don't want to hear, well, Tom Brady's 45. Tom Brady isn't a human being. Okay. He's not.
But that's another thing that the Vikings fan base is very good at, is picking out the exceptions and the outliers and saying, see, this happened, so that means it can happen for us.
Yeah, Matt Stafford won a Super Bowl.
Have you been a Vikings fan for more than a week? We know that luck does not fall on the side of the Minnesota Vikings 99 times out of 100. So just because somebody else got lucky and it happened does not mean it's going to happen for us.
My worth is, can they afford Cousins cap hit? Yes, because we would have a lot of dead cap on that, because a lot of his remaining cap number of the $48 million that he's owed over the next 2 years. And yes, he is owed cap money over the next 2 years, even though he's under a contract for one. That's those void years, that dead money. The Vikings would be assuming a lot of that. He's got a $20 million roster bonus due on March 20th, which means if he's traded before that, the new team would take it. But if he's traded after that, the Vikings would take it. The Vikings would also take his prorated signing bonus money. So realistically, if a team were to trade for Kirk Cousins, well, one, they would probably extend him anyway. But having said that, yes, they can make it work into the salary cap over in San Francisco, because his current contract really isn't all that much of regular salary. It is now at this point just mostly signing bonus here that the Vikings would absorb most of it here. Let's see here. I like I like pretty much everyone in Mary's comments here, but trust your fans. We will always be here. We just want a Super Bowl. We won't walk away because you're building a team that will be great. Not good. Great. 100% agree, Mary. And Worthless agrees with you as well. Let's see. Do the Vikings need an elite offensive coordinator? Well, I thought that's what Kevin O'Connell was supposed to be, but I digress. Dave does have a good point. Lamar Jackson is a mid-range scorer. Yeah, I don't disagree with you at all, Dave. Somebody asked me, or somebody put it out there. I forget which show I was watching, but would you trade Kirk Cousins for Lamar Jackson? Well, if I had to take one or the other, and I had to give one or the other market value, I would take Lamar. But I don't want either one of those guys at market value. I like both of those guys on rookie contracts, but not at market value. I don't.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm the same way. Lamar Jackson hasn't shown me enough to tell me he's warranted to be the next $40, $50 million quarterback.
Right.
He's hurt too much. And even though he's gotten a lot better throwing the ball, he's not a great passer. He's a runner who throws the ball.
I agree. Shout out, James. We are Kirsten. Yes, indeed, we are. To use your line, Ryno, if you've been a fan of the Vikings for more than a week, you know that this team is a curse fraction. Yeah,
right.
I'm going to say it like this. Yeah, Enzo brings up a good point. He did win an MVP. I agree. What I'm saying is that, yes, if I could trade for Joe Burrow, I would give Joe Burrow $55 million and I wouldn't break. Right. Patrick Mahomes, same type of deal. What I'm saying is that in the guise of that Kirk Cousins isn't the problem, but he's also not the solution, which is how I look at Cousins. He's not the problem with this team, but he's also not a guy that's going to be a solution for this team. Lamar Jackson's in that same boat. Yes, I would probably pound for pound, even money straight up. Would I probably take Lamar? Yes. But if you traded for Lamar, or if you traded Cousins and you signed Lamar, you're running into the same issues that you're going to run into with Kirk Cousins. Yes, he could do some other things that might elevate this team slightly better than Kirk could. But to me, Lamar Jackson isn't the solution anymore than Kirk Cousins is. But yes, I would say that I would take him over Kirk, but I don't want him because he doesn't solve any of the problems for me there. Having said all that, we just got through done talking about what the Vikings should do. Ultimately, what do you think they're going to do? Because at the end of the day, Kwesi can say all he wants. Well, this is what I would do. But it's not about what Kwesi wants to do. It's about what Ziggy and Mark Wilf want to do. So what do you think they're actually going to do, Ryno?
Well, and that's the part that scares me because that was kind of, I believe, the mandate last year is that we're running it back. They convinced themselves that it was all Mike Zimmer's fault and to a lesser extent Rick Spielman. So we're going to bring in some new blood and we're going to run it back. And they saw it's 13-4. Okay, great. We'll fix the defense. We'll get a new defensive coordinator because now it was Ed Donatell's fault.
Right.
But the problem with all this stuff is they're resting on their laurels and banking on the fact that players are not going to get worse or start losing on the back end of their peak. And we've got way too many players that have already gone over the top of that peak and are going back down. So, we saw what Eric Kendricks looked like this year, what Harrison Smith looked like this year, what Adam Thielen looked like this year. It's very likely that they're all going to look worse than that in 2023.
I completely agree. On one hand, was so thrilled with how this season went. Mm-hmm. It finally got me to the point where it's just like, you know what? You can actually do this content thing. And you've got a great opportunity right now because they're having a season that nobody expected out of them. But my biggest fear, just like in 2019, if the Vikings had not beaten the New Orleans Saints, they would have moved on from Mike Zimmer for sure, and possibly Rick Spielman. I don't know about Spielman in 2019 if they don't beat the Saints. They might have given Spielman one more crack at another head coach. But in 2019, if they lose that game, we start our process 2 years sooner than we actually did. That New Orleans Saints victory, we don't have to give it back. We don't have to wish it didn't happen, but that delayed the inevitable by 2 years. And we went 7-9 and 8-9 with the stupid 17th game, but you get my point.
Yeah.
All it did was delay the inevitable. I am afraid that the Wilfs are going to say, hey, we went from 7/8 wins to 13 wins. We must still be on to something here. Everything's fine. Let's go ostrich on the bit and put our heads, bury our heads in the sand. Everything's fine. Let's just keep running it back. So I agree. I think my biggest fear is that the Wilfs are running this like a business, which is their right. I'm not saying that they don't have the right to do so, but I'm not saying that they don't want to win a championship. I'm saying that their desire to not be bad is greater than their desire to be great. Is the simplest way I would say it. So I don't know that I would trade Kirk Cousins for trade Lance. I mean, if gun to the head,
not straight up.
Not straight up, no. But the problem is that San Francisco doesn't have any meaningful draft capital because they used it to get Trey Lance in the first place. I mean, if San Francisco could give me Trey Lance for Kirk Cousins and a first or a second round pick this year, like if they made a different trade to acquire one, then I'm definitely listening, and I would probably definitely do it. My bigger thing is that if you're going to trade Kirk Cousins, and you could get Kirk Cousins to waive his no trade clause. So again, mind you, that's the starting point in all of this is finding a team that he would actually go to. I don't know that San Francisco is the place I would want to send him. I would want to send him to a place where maybe I could get a little bit more draft capital because there's part of me that would rather draft my own quarterback and start that 5-year rookie contract from the beginning versus starting it halfway through with Trey Lance.
Yeah.
I'm onto something
Ideally, I don't disagree with that. But the problem is, and here again, it's that whole, the Vikings are too good to be bad and too bad to be good.
Yes.
It puts us right in the middle of that mid-range drafting all the time. We're never bad enough to be in a good position, and we don't have the cojones to make the to make the trade up to pick a franchise quarterback in the top 5 or 6 picks. We're always in that 11 to 25 range, where the prime picks are always gone. And, you know, when Rick Spielman was here running the show, he valued his draft picks so much. There was no way he was going to package a whole bunch of stuff and move up and take a risk on a quarterback. So there's multiple different mindsets there that are going on, and they're all fighting against each other, and none of them are what's in the best interest of the team, I guess, in my opinion.
Yeah. The problem is that the mindset of the Wills is the one that's going to win because, well, they call the shots. What's up, Bandito? Thanks for joining us. Very much appreciate you. Hey, you guys, it's been a while that we've been going on here, but if you don't already subscribe to Vikings Uncensored and you're watching this on Purple and Gopher Days or Minnesota Sports Talk, please go hit up my buddy Ryno and subscribe to Vikings Uncensored. You guys still doing your weekly Friday shows? You're going to be doing a little bit more, a little bit less?
Fridays at 6 p.m. Central Time. We're doing most of the shows as a pre-recorded, but then we do a live chat premiere with on Friday nights. So either myself or Lance are in on a live chat talking with everybody as the show is premiering. We are planning on doing some more live stuff. We made the move over to StreamYard to make things a little bit easier for that kind of stuff. We're just trying to work it in with Lance's schedule with his work and things like that, because he's works evenings a lot. So trying to work it as we can, and we've got some ideas in the fire here for later on in the off season. So, subscribe to the channel if you have not so far, because we'll have some good stuff for you coming up.
Absolutely. And if you're watching on Purple and Gopher Days and you don't already subscribe to Minnesota Sports Talk, please do so, and vice versa as well. If you're on Sports Talk, hit up Purple and Gopher Days. We're going to wrap this here in about 6 minutes. We're going to go till a quarter of the hour here, so we're just going to wrap up a couple more things here. Having said all of that, we'll operate under the assumption that the Wilfs are going to do what they always do, which is to say, hey, no, 13 wins. We don't need to tear down. We need to just keep pushing forward here. What do you want to see the Vikings do with their first draft pick or two? Where do you want to see them focused on the draft? Again, I realize it's a little difficult because we haven't even hit the Super Bowl, much less free agency, to know what players we might possibly sign and get rid of. But initial thoughts on what you think the Vikings should do in the draft?
I know everybody's already pushing we got to get a cornerback, or we got to do this, or we got to do that. Me, and it all depends on how the board falls, and with the Senior Bowl going on this week and the Combine coming up, you're going to have risers and fallers and things like that. I'm almost in the mindset that we should be targeting a wide receiver 2 very early in the draft, whether that's a first round, whether we trade back a little bit, pick up an extra pick, get one in the second round, something like that. We have to get some more speed at linebacker. I mean, we've got Asamoah, who likely is going to start in one of the 2 spots next year. But whether for some reason Kendricks is still around, which I don't think he will be, or Jordan Hicks, neither one of them have the speed to cover across the middle, and that was proven over and over again this year. So we need more speed there. We got to find a center. I think a center you can probably find in the mid rounds. But early on, I honestly believe Kwesi's going to try to trade back and accumulate a couple more picks, because we have, 5 right now?
Yeah.
But, and another spot that I would take early, if there's a good one available, is a big bruising monster nose tackle to put in the middle, because that is one of the hallmarks of having a successful 3-4 defense, and we don't have that right now.
I agree. My first choice would be a wide receiver 2 that, let's say you were a wide receiver needy team that would, we want this guy to develop into our wide receiver 1. If you're going to go the route of sticking with Kirk Cousins or whatever you decide to do a quarterback, since this defense isn't getting fixed overnight, yes, get a outstanding number 2 wide receiver. Look at the Cincinnati Bengals when you got a guy like T. Higgins, and then they add a guy like Jamar Chase. as an example. Now, okay, Kansas City is a bit of an anomaly that they can just run with, mediocre wide receiver. Okay, you got Travis Kelce still, you had Tyreek Hill, but the bottom line is you have Patrick Mahomes. To me, if there is a wide receiver that could come in and start in day one, falling to you on that board, that's the route I would go. Second, I would go defensive tackle. You need a monster. We saw what Lawrence from the Giants did in both games against the Vikings this season, particularly with the season on the line. So I would go defensive tackle second, and then, yes, cornerback after that. Linebackers, yeah, if there's one there that is just like, wow, how did this guy fall? Okay, that's one thing. But to me, linebackers are like running backs, and they're not completely indispensable, but to me, I'm not going to use my first round pick on a linebacker because, again,
no, I wouldn't either. But
you build your team with the offensive line, the defensive line, the wide receivers, and the quarterbacks and the cornerbacks. So, to me, I want something on the defensive line, the offensive line, or wide receiver. Those are, to me, the three areas that I would absolutely go for. But that's just me at this particular point in time. Having said all that, here's your prediction time. You got to bet $1 million. You got to bet the house. Who stays and who goes? And we're talking about Thielen, Zadarius Smith, Harrison Smith, Kendricks, all of those guys. Does Patrick Peterson re-sign? Give us empty out the bottom of the notebook and tell us what you got going on.
So am I going what I would do or what I think is going to happen?
What you think? We're now at we're predicting what we think is going to happen point. I think everybody knows what we would do. We would strip it down.
Yeah.
What do you got?
I think Harrison Smith probably sticks around another year. Adam Thielen he's almost got to go with that cap number. You can't play him on that unless there's some way that you can, Rob Brzezinski can work his salary cap wizardry to knock stuff down and have him actually take a pay cut, not just kick the can down the road again.
Right.
I think Thielen's gone. I think Kendricks is gone. Very likely Zadarius Smith is probably gone. Dalvin Cook should be gone. And if they can't restructure him or do something with that cap number, he's going to have to just cut him and let him go. And we've shown that this last year that, the running backs don't hold the priority in Kevin O'Connell's offense like they did under the Zimmer regime. So Patrick Peterson, if they can get him on the cheap, I'd take him back, but I'm not going to dole out significant money for a 33-year-old cornerback who, yes, he had statistically one of his better years he's had in a while, but there was also many times during the games where he was getting burned. And, he's another one that's at that tail end of the career where myself personally, I think it's time to just, thanks, Pat. You were great when you were here, but we'll catch you down the road. I guess that's kind of where I'm at.
To me, Adam Thielen, Eric Kendricks, Dalvin Cook, you're our sacred cows. I'm sorry, but it's time to move on. If you can get Dalvin Cook back for really, really cheap, which I doubt, then I can maybe listen to that. But I'm not down with bringing Kendricks back, not even for veterans minimum. You saw how lost he was out there. Patrick Peterson, if he would take, a very minimal contract, I would take him back, but I seriously doubt he would, and nor should he. He shouldn't sell himself short, so I would have no expectation that, Patrick Peterson should just play for free. Well, no, not at all. I would like to see Harrison Smith back under a restructure, but at the same time, if you restructure him, you're just pushing that dead cap hit on his contract. I think what's going to happen is that they're going to leave Harrison Smith alone and play him this year and then just straight cut him next year, or if they can find a trade value that is worth getting rid of him at that point, I think that's what they'll do there. Alexander Madison, unless he gave you the Latavius Murray, I agree with you. Let's just turn it over to the young guys and go from there. Maybe draft one in the 7th round or something like that. Is there anybody else who I haven't hit here? I think that, Jordan Hicks, gone. I'm sorry. I probably didn't say his name right off the bat, but let's just go ahead and say it now. Gone. See you bye. Naga, not going to work here anymore anyway. So I guess where I'm going to leave it with this is, first off, everybody, thanks again for joining us. If you haven't already hit the like button, we got 18 people in this chat right now, and we've only got a combined 14 likes. So if you could hit those like buttons, if you could, on both Minnesota Sports Talk and Purple and Gopher Days, as well as hitting those subscribe buttons on those two channels, as well as our guest Vikings Uncensored, and to help Ryno. I'm sorry, what's your partner's name? I forgot. What's your partner's name?
Brunswick,
that's right. Help those guys out and hit those subs there as well. I just don't want to see the same thing again. You know what? I know that there are going to be some people that are just like, well, I'd rather see the Vikings be competitive for the division and take our chances in the playoffs. That doesn't do anything for me anymore. And I'm just willing at this point to say, hey, you know what? If they keep Kirk Cousins for one more year and let him ride after that, okay, I'm okay with that. If you're going to do that, I would just say, well, why not trade him and get something for him, whether that's Trey Lance or whether that's just draft capital. Heck, if Aaron Rodgers doesn't go to New York and Kirk Cousins says, yeah, I'll go to New York, that's one of the places I was thinking about signing when I signed with the Vikings. And I can see that team has a very, very good defense and has got a better opportunity to win. Then, yeah, I would trade him to New York and get some draft capital. I'm not saying that I'm like gung-ho, get rid of Cousins. I can't stand him. He whatever. But at the same time, I don't want to just appreciate the asset and then get nothing in return.
Right.
But I guess what I'm saying is, Ziggy and Mark, Kwesi, Kevin, don't let the fool's gold. And that's what it is. This season was fun, but it's fool's gold if you think that this is a 13-4 team that's on the rise and that's going to be around. No, they're probably a 10 or 11 win team that got a lot of breaks, and that's okay. You don't have to apologize for that. But let's not fool ourselves into thinking that this team is still in a window where it can be competitive to win a Super Bowl. So, like I said, I would get rid of those players. I would keep the rest. Do what you have to, if Justin Jefferson wants to sign his extension, you say to him, all right, how much do you want? And you give it to him and you work out the rest later. We haven't talked about him very much this evening. But having said that, the one thing that I want more than anything is I just want some answers, and I just want it to be, can we stop with the Civil War when it comes to the quarterback? The quarterback is a very good quarterback. Nobody's saying he's not. And those who think that he's not a very good quarterback, they're just as ridiculous as those people that think that he's an elite quarterback. He's very good. He's just not great. And at this point,
he's an Alex Smith.
Yes, he's a rich man's Alex Smith. He's a rich man's Alex Smith. You have to at this point know what his ceiling is. And does that mean I'm saying it's his fault? No, I'm not saying it's his fault. I'm saying it just is what it is. I'll leave it with my line that I said earlier. Kirk Cousins is not the problem, ladies and gentlemen. He's also not the solution. And the Vikings right now, we need a lot of solutions. And that's why the offseason is almost just as fun as the real season itself. We got draft, we got free agency, and oh, by the way, we got this game a week from this coming Sunday called the Super Bowl. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Ryno, my friend, thank you again for sitting in here tonight on
absolutely.
It was an absolute blast. We're going to do this a million times again, and hit me up if we want to. If you and Brunswick can find a time where you guys want to do a live show together. I know that going live the first time can be a little bit intimidating. So if you want to do something together, we can certainly do that here. But want to thank everybody for joining us. Like I said, hit the subs on all the channels, hit the like buttons on all the videos. And thank you kindly for joining us. We'll be back. Thanks for joining Under the Lights, and have a good evening. Good night.
Hey guys.